Okay, so what if attraction isn't really about, some clever game or using tricks? What if it's just genuinely being you? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into Mark Manson's book, Models Attract Women Through Honesty. It's pretty influential.
Yeah, it really shook things up when it came out.
Totally. Our mission here is to unpack how it kind of breaks away from all that typical dating advice. It focuses way more on self-respect and making real, authentic connections. And hopefully by the end, you'll get a clear picture of how just expressing yourself honestly can foster attraction, some practical stuff for your own life.
Definitely. It reframes the whole thing.
Right. So Models doesn't see attraction as like a checklist or a performance you put on.
Oh, not at all.
It frames it fundamentally as an emotional process, which is, well, it's a pretty big shift, isn't it?
It is. It takes the focus off the external stuff, the tactics, trying to impress, and puts it right onto your internal state, your being.
So the idea is that working on yourself, being authentic, that's what leads to real connection.
Precisely. And what's really fascinating is how deep Manson goes on this. The core idea is attracting people without faking behavior, without lying, and without emulating others.
Okay.
It's about showing your real intentions, your emotions, your vulnerability.
Vulnerability. That word comes up a lot. How does he define it? Because it sounds kind of scary.
Well, he defines it pretty simply. Putting yourself in a position where you can be rejected. But he argues it's actually a deep and subtle form of power.
Power? How so?
Because it signals your self-worth isn't tied to what other people think. It comes from inside,
Yeah.
You're okay regardless of their reaction.
Okay, I see. So that internal self-worth, how do you actually build that, especially if you're used to looking for approval outside?
Yeah, good question. It ties directly into another huge concept, non-neediness.
Non-neediness, okay.
Manson defines neediness as placing higher priorities on how others perceive you rather than on how you perceive yourself.
Right, putting others' opinions first.
Exactly. So non-neediness is flipping that. It requires self-respect, having clear boundaries.
Boundaries, okay.
And something he calls identity diversification. Basically, don't put all your eggs in one basket, happiness-wise.
So have other things going on in your life besides dating.
Totally. Hobbies, passions, friends, work you care about. He explicitly says your primary investment should be yourself.
Makes sense. Invest in yourself. Become less needy.
And that makes authentic vulnerability possible. It leads to healthier relationships overall.
Okay, so if we zoom out a bit, Manson lays out these 3 fundamentals, right, for growth and attraction.
Yeah, and they're really interconnected, not just separate tips.
Right. What are they?
First is honest living. That's about building a life that's genuinely interesting to you.
Like hobbies and stuff.
Yeah, being well-read, trying new things, taking care of your appearance, just having a life you actually enjoy.
Okay. Honest living. What's next?
Honest action. This is about facing your fears, especially social anxieties.
Like actually talking to people, even if it's scary.
Exactly. Being bold, managing that nervousness you might feel, taking action despite fear.
Got it. And the third?
Honest communication. Mastering expressing yourself genuinely and emotionally.
So less like interrogation, more sharing.
Yeah, using statements more than questions, using real humor, telling stories, connecting on an emotional level.
Okay. Living, action, communication. Makes sense as pillars. So after all this internal work, how does he suggest applying it? Like in actual social situations?
Right. He offers a practical framework. He talks about categorizing interactions into 3 types: unreceptive, neutral, and receptive.
Why categorize? Isn't that kind of judgy?
It's less about judging the person and more about being emotionally efficient and protecting your own energy. Self-preservation.
Okay. How does that work?
If someone's clearly unreceptive, you just recognize it quickly and disengage politely. Respect your time, respect theirs. Don't waste energy trying to win someone over who isn't interested.
Right. Saves frustration. What about neutral? Ambiguous signals.
That's where he says to polarize. Basically, act authentically in a way that encourages a clear response. Get off the fence. Find out if it's a yes or a no.
Okay. Cut through the ambiguity. And receptive.
That's straightforward. If someone is clearly interested, you escalate. You take initiative. Deepen the connection. Move things forward. It all comes back to that non-needy core.
Gotcha. So, thinking about the book's impact, it's praised a lot, right? Especially compared to the old pickup artist stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's seen as much more empowering. It focuses on genuine self-improvement, confidence from the inside out, not tricks or disguises.
So it kind of changed the game in self-help for relationships.
Hugely. It marked a big shift from external manipulation towards internal growth and just being real. That's why it's still so relevant, I think, even though it came out back in 2011.
Yeah, that focus on honesty, vulnerability, non-neediness, that stuff doesn't really go out of style, does it?
Exactly. It taps into fundamental human psychology, not just fleeting dating trends.
But it's not without criticism, right? I've heard some people find parts of it a bit iffy.
That's fair,
Yeah.
yeah. While the core message resonates with many, some of the specific how-to advice, particularly later in the book, gets called out.
Like what, for example?
There's a specific line about essentially pushing ahead physically until explicitly stopped. Critics argue that piece of advice feels really problematic and seems to, contradict the book's own emphasis on respect and non-neediness.
Okay, I can see how that would clash, especially with modern conversations around consent.
Precisely. So, while the foundation is strong for many, that specific part is definitely a point of contention and something readers need to critically evaluate.
Okay, so wrapping things up. Models basically redefines attraction, yeah. Makes it about the journey of becoming more authentic yourself.
Honesty, vulnerability, non-neediness, those are the keys he presents.
It's about inner work leading to outer results.
Right. And maybe here's a final thought for your listening. Think about how embracing your authentic self, including those vulnerabilities, how that doesn't just potentially improve dating, but how it might enrich, all your relationships, your connection with yourself, and just your overall well-being. Something to chew on?